Hello everyone, it's time for our RE lesson. Our theme is inspirational people. So today I'm going to introduce you to someone who is very, very inspirational. But before we do that, you need to have your writing equipment ready. So something to write with and something to do your recording in. Okay, let's get started. Before we start, I'd like you to write down as many words you can find from these letters. If you unscramble the letter, you should, does anyone know what the word would be? That's right, Martin Luther King. So today's lesson is going to be about Martin Luther King. Okay? The learning intention is to know who Martin Luther King is and some examples, find out about some things in his life that makes him a key figure in history. Your success criteria is to know facts about Martin Luther King and be able to give examples from his life that state why he was important at that time. Also, you should be able to confidently give your opinion as to whether he was an inspirational person or not and say why. So this is a picture of Martin Luther King. Okay, so who was Martin Luther King and why was he important? What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video and write down what you already know about Martin Luther King. So here are some facts about him. Martin Luther King was an American Baptist minister, which means he was the leader of the faith. He was active in the civil rights movement after the Montgomery bus boycott. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, and he argued it was a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. That means if there's laws which are not right, or if there are laws which is not fair and equal, then everyone has the responsibility to disobey it.
Make my decisions on the basis of my moral commitment, and I take my ministry very seriously. I would not say that the civil rights movement is dead. It's simply that we are moving to a new phase of the movement. For now 12 years, we struggle to end legal segregation and all of the humiliation surrounding legal segregation. So it was a struggle for decency. It was a struggle to get rid of extremist behavior toward Negroes. Now we are in a new phase, and that is a phase where we are seeking genuine equality, where we are dealing with hard economic and social issues. And it means that the job is much more difficult. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee an annual income. It's much easier to integrate a bus than it is to get a program that will force the government to put billions of dollars into ending slums. It's a wonderful thing to work and be concerned about integrating public accommodations, or integrating the public schools, which I will continue to work for with vigor and with zeal. But I've also got to be concerned about the survival of a world in which to be integrated. And these issues to me are tied together in that sense.
How did you arrive at this decision, and who influenced your thinking?
I thought about it for several months, and finally I went away to write a book in Jamaica, where I had a chance to reflect and meditate and do a great deal of thinking about the war in Vietnam. And I came to the conclusion then that I had no alternative but to take a vigorous stand against the war.
Dr. King, when you speak out against this war, do you speak as a Negro opponent of the war? Is there something especially anti-Negro or racist about the war that impels you to speak out?
I cannot overlook the fact that I am a Negro, and that this war is doing a great deal to destroy the lives of thousands and thousands of my brothers and sisters We are dying physically in disproportionate numbers in Vietnam, some 22 and 4/10% of the deaths, even though we are only about 11% of the population. The other thing is that we are dying spiritually and psychologically in disproportionate numbers at home, in the ghettos. And I think the war itself accounts for our constant spiritual and psychological death here at home. I weighed the criticisms that I would get. I thought about even the fact that some Negroes wouldn't understand, and some respectable Negro leaders who are more concerned about being invited to the White House than invited to the cause of justice would be against me. I weighed all of this. And as I weighed in it, as I prayed over it, something said to me that you got to speak on this issue. If you don't speak on it and others don't speak, I'm not going to give up. I'll have even the rocks to cry out against this war. It's an evil war. No matter where it leads, no matter what abuses it may bring, I'm going to tell the truth.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered a speech that would define the civil rights movement and his legacy. This, of course, was his I Have a Dream speech, delivered on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom.
Little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
The March on Washington served as a massive push for economic and political justice for African Americans. Held during the year celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, crowds marched on the National Mall to watch a variety of musical performances and speeches. Dr. King, a Baptist preacher and prominent civil rights leader, was scheduled to speak towards the end of the day, his debut on the national stage. Up until that point, King mostly addressed small crowds at black churches, rallies, or fundraisers. This time, he would be seen by nearly 250,000 people on the ground, as well as millions at home watching on television. This was an opportunity to reach a wide audience and persuade the public and the government to take action against racial injustice. The night before, King worked with a close group of advisors to get the speech just right. They worked through the night, settling on a final draft in the pre-dawn hours of August 28th. Interestingly, the phrase, "I have a dream," a phrase he used in earlier speeches, was nowhere to be found in this copy. The words wouldn't manifest until almost halfway into Dr. King's speech, when gospel singer Mahalia Jackson, who had performed earlier in the day, called out to him from the sidelines to tell them about the dream. King set his prepared remarks aside and improvised the rest, crafting a soaring speech that would sear into the minds of millions of Americans.
No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream.
The speech was divided into two parts. The first listed the injustices that African Americans faced: segregation, police brutality, disenfranchisement, and discrimination, and urged a call to nonviolent action. The second launched into King's dream of peace and racial harmony, a vision of a future in which people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I have a dream.
Highlighting King's skills as a preacher, I Have a Dream was part sermon and part poetry, using rhetorical devices like repetition, rhyme, and vivid metaphor to drive his points home. It was peppered with historic, biblical, and literary references that moved the crowd. This message of struggle and hope became the defining moment not only of King's career, but also the civil rights movement. Both the speech and the March on Washington were credited with helping secure the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, a landmark piece of legislation that ended segregation and banned discrimination on the basis of race, or sex in the workplace.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty! We are free at last!
The speech also resonated with activists around the globe. I have a dream. The phrase that wasn't even meant to be in its final draft appeared in political actions all around the world. It's considered one of the world's most transformative and influential speeches, alongside others like Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and Winston Churchill's Blood, Toil, Tears, and Sweat. I Have a Dream is only one of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s many achievements, but it's nonetheless one of the most pivotal.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
What I'd like you to do is read the speech by Martin Luther King, which can be found in our RE blog page on Purple Mash, and answer the following questions. So why was this speech important? What do you think is the key line in this speech? Do you think people would listen to Martin Luther King? Why do you think this? So at the end of this session, what do you think of Martin Luther King? Do you think he was inspirational? If he was, why? Write down your answers. Pause the video. So we have come to the end of our RE lesson. I hope you all know who Martin Luther King is and why he is a key figure in history. And I also want you to be able to confidently give your opinion as to whether you think he's an inspirational person or not, and state why. So I'm looking forward to reading your work, and I hope that you will all email your work to me. And along with that, I have a challenge for you. So the challenge is for you to find one person in history who was both religious and inspirational, and I want you to write down why you chose that person, okay? So looking forward to seeing your work. Take care. Bye.